Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare
Jaya परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सहस्रविश्वमान अभय चरणारोहण वेदांत गोस्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय ओम नित्या प्रविष्ट ओम श्रीपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सहस्रविश्वमान भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की आनंद कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की रामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की हो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री राधा कृष्ण गोविंद श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन वृंदावन धाम की मायपुर धाम की त्रिपुरी धाम की नागपुरी धाम की द्वारकापुरी धाम की दमाई की रमाई की देवी की भक्ति देवी की सामवेद भक्त वृंद की गौर प्रेमानंद all glories to the assembled all glories to the assembled all glories to the assembled all glories to Shri Guru and Shri all glories to Shri Prabhupada Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnapastaya Vandane Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Prajarine Navishesha Shunivadi Pashatya Chanarane Om Prajnativirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmiliram Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadam Dadadi Subhadam Digam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudavadagamadam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Hidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Karijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Vadan Sahagana Nidam Shri Vishakhanvitam Scham Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnapastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prajarine Navishesha Shunivadi Pashatya Chatarine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnapastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Namane Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dainaya Prabhaptai Krishna Sambandha Vijnanam Daini Prabhuve Namaha Madhurya Ujjwala Premadhya Shri Rupanugavatida Shri Gaurakaruna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostude Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinadarine Rupanugaviruddhava Siddhanta Dvandhaharine Namo Gaurishwaraya Sakshat Vairagyamurte Vipralambarasamhode Padambujayade Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachidanandamine Gaurashakti Swarupaya Rupanam Gaurayane Gauravirbhavo Mestam Murteshta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaye Namaha Vajravarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Vadilanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gauratmane Namaha Panchadhatmatmadam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavadayam Bhaktadyam Namami Bhaktashabdiyam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpane Gopesha Gopika Kanda Radha Kanda Namostude Jayanam Surado Bambo Mama Vandamade Gani Matsarvasavadam Bhojo Radha Madanamohanam Vidyabandharanya Kalpadrumada Srimad Ratnagara Simhasanastu Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prashalaki Sevyamanaho Smaravami Srimad Rasarasarambhi Vamshi Vadadastidaham Karshan Venusvaner Govinda Shri Sunaham Tapakatana Gauravani Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Purushahana Suryadevi Pranami Haripriye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we discussed last Saturday the first verse in the Ishopanishad. Ishopanishad starts with the invocation prayers. Om Purnamadam Purnamidam Purnam Purnamudachyate Purnasyam Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. That is the invocation prayers. And then the first verse, which is Ishavasamidam Sarvam Yat Kinta Jagatyam Jagat Tena Tetvena Bunchida Ma Ghrida Kasya Siddham. That is a verse we were discussing last several Saturdays. So, there in this Upanishad, the whole message of Ishopanishad is in that first verse, Ishavasamidam Sarvam. The remaining verses which comes after this are all to support this concept, what the sages have spoken in the first verse. That means the first verse is the most important verse in the Ishopanishad. The first verse is this Ishavasamidam Sarvam. So we were discussing that, and we also spoke about that the the soul and the body, when they are together, it is called Sharira Sankhara. Sankhara means all things together. And in that grouping of the mind, body, intelligence, false ego, and also the soul together as a unit, we have spoken this many times, that the soul has no impact whatsoever from any of the other components in that body, in that unit. Just like we say that the mind, intelligence, although they are forming a part of our gross existence in this gross body, the activities of the mind, activities of the intelligence or the senses has no influence whatsoever on the soul. This is a very important concept because this is based on this that Ishavasamidam Sarvam has come. Ishavasamidam Sarvam, Upanishads are saying there that the cover everything with Krishna. Ishavasamidam Sarvam. Only what exists is Krishna in this world. If you cover Ishavasamidam Achadaniyam. Achadaniyam means cover up the whole thing with Krishna's presence in this whole creation. That's why we are talking about that our happiness in this world, people think that if my body is in a good state, mind is in a good state, I will be in a happy state, but it is not so. Happiness comes from some another source. It doesn't come from the body or from the mind. It's a difficult thing for most of the people to accept this understanding. But the sages are telling us that the body sometimes can be in serious problems, but still there can be happiness inside. Just like we gave this example of a person who was very, very rich, had all comforts and facilities in life, and suddenly due to circumstances, everything gone. One day he has become completely penniless and put into a very difficult situation. Difficult in the sense externally found difficulty, but he realized at that point that he could live in this world without many things what he thought is necessary to maintain this body. He came to that understanding. Much later, when he got back a lot of wealth again due to whatever karma what has followed him, he started realizing that inside happiness was not affected by the external factors. External factors had no influence on that. This understanding is important in spiritual life also, because that as we understand the existence of the soul and the happiness that's coming from the soul is a completely different dimensions than what we receive through the senses and the mind. This is the point. That through the mind and the senses we extract so-called happiness from this world. The happiness that is what is coming from the soul is of a different nature. That is why it says it like that. So Krishna gives an opportunity for everyone to go through this in one's own life. It's quite usual that people are put into all this. Inner happiness is not proportionate to the external situation. In other words, body, the mind, it may bring or may not bring happiness, but inside the happiness is not dependent on any of these things. And we will realize this with our own experience in this world. That's all you can say about that. With our own experience, we learn these things in the world. So, opportunity we get sometimes to hear these things. For example, people who are very, very sick, and also many people who have got bodily problems, different kinds of physical disabilities and things like that. And you may be thinking that they are all unhappy in life because of that. Not necessarily. Happiness inside is not dependent on the external body. We misunderstand and we try to alter the situation thinking that by providing them the comforts in the body and the mind, they will become happy. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So, up to a certain level, the bodily comforts and health matters. And it gives you some pleasure on a physical level. But inner happiness is not dependent on the factor as far as the comfort of the body is concerned. Because otherwise this verse has no meaning. Purnamadam, it says. Soul is complete in itself. The soul's, that completeness is the most important thing. That if soul has to become happy, or happiness has to come from the soul, and it is dependent on the external factors like the external world or the senses and sense enjoyment, in that case it's not Purnam, it's not complete, isn't it? Purnamadam, the sages are insisting that it is complete in itself. The soul is complete in itself. Why? Because they realize that the external factors have no influence on the happiness what comes from the soul, which is completely coming from a different source. That is why sometimes you can observe this. People who have a lot of wealth and who have all facilities in life, they cannot sleep. Sometimes one completely poor person, fully impoverished, he has nothing, he has bodily problems, he sleeps complete, in peace, in the middle of the road, he sleeps sometimes. Why? Why is it? He is able to sleep, the other person can't sleep with everything. This is the reason. That happiness, that is a completely different factor. It has nothing to do with your material situation. It comes from the soul. So many, of course here you may not notice it so much, but in India you will see this. Quite often, in the middle of the road, traffic is going on either side, people are sleeping in the middle of the road. Sometimes you observe such things and you will completely surprised at how they could sleep. Because that happiness which comes from inside is not dependent on the external factors. This one has to observe. And that's why it says here that fullness of the soul, the fullness, that's what it is, the fullness. Soul is full in itself. Purnamadam, Purnamidam. And you can't do anything about that. You can't do anything about that. Because it is complete in itself. Because, and when we analyze this point, you'll come to know that I'm not this body. I'm not this body. I'm not this mind either. What is my real nature? This is where the question begins at that. And that is what we talked about, that we said this, that the soul, when it has in its, when we are on the spiritual platform, these activities of the body and the mind have very little impact, very little influence on inner self, on the self. This is precisely the reason, if you look into Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in the second chapter, verse 17, if you look at there is a classic comparison Krishna has given there. It says there, Apuryamanam ajala pradishtam. Those who have studied that verse, they will notice this. Apuryamanam ajala pradishtam. Samudram apa pravishandhi dwar. Tadvad kamayam pravishandi sarve. Sashanti mapnodina kamagami. It's a very important verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is saying there, Apuryamanam ajala pradishtam. Then, a person, Apuryamanam ajala pradishtam. Ajala pradishtam means one who is not shaken under any circumstances. He is not affected by anything. How does that happen to a person? How does that situation happen? It's not by his determination or willpower that it happens. Apuryamanam ajala pradishtam. Ajala pradishtam, that state of mind, that state where he does not feel any necessity to be dependent on externalities, external things. Samudramapa pravishandi yadvad, and Krishna gives the comparison that so many rivers are flowing to the sea from all over the land. Many rivers rush into the sea to reach the sea, and they create a lot of noise and sound on their way to the sea. But when they get to the sea, they are quiet. They can't say anything anymore. So he says here, just like incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So, with this verse, Krishna is telling us, just by satisfying all our material desires, if we think we can be happy, Krishna says it's not possible. That's not possible. We have to accept what Krishna says here, because the second chapter, which is Sankhya, which is the basis of Jnanam, Jnana Yoga is based on the Sankhya. Majority of the topics what Krishna has taken from the Sankhya is here in this chapter. In this chapter, Abhuviryanonam Ajala Pradishtam Samudramava Pravishandi Yadvad Tadvad Kamanyam Pravishandi Sarve Sashantim Apnoti Na Kamakami. Kamakami means one who is constantly striving in this world to satisfy his desires, gratify his desires. He is called Kamakami. Sashantim apnoti na kamakami. Kamakami will not become happy. That is Krishna's point. But who sashantim apnoti, who becomes happy then? Krishna's position is that tadvat kamamyam pravishandi sarve. That kamam is coming, but due to the higher understanding of the soul, because of the self-realization, he has understood that all these desires that is coming up has no significance, has no impact on me. Able to stay outside and observe the desires that's coming and leaving away. Particularly, you can observe this. When you chant the holy name, what happens? Generally, when we chant the holy name, what normally happens is that if you are continuously chanting, you will observe one thing. These vasanas or the desires inside, they pops up. Very often you can observe that. They will come up. It is at that time you can observe yourself, you can understand yourself, see yourself what you are. The subtle body, what we all think about ourselves, we are nice people, good people, and so many things we think about ourselves. But only while chanting you will know when these desires keep coming out from inside, you will understand, you can see through each and every desire that pops up inside, and that is how you observe your subtle body. That's the way to see the subtle body. That is one of the things what chanting does. When you chant the holy name, this is what happens. Immediately, if you are chanting seriously, you will notice these different desires what we had inside, they keep coming out in different forms. And individual desires you can observe at that time coming out through our consciousness. Through our consciousness. So, that is why Tadvat Kamamyam Pravishanti Sarve Sashantim Apnoti Na Kamakami. So, Krishna says like this, that no matter how many rivers comes to the sea, ultimately the sea is not affected by anything. And a person who has realized the self, he is in the same state. He is never affected by anything what goes on in this world. Why? Because he has touched the screen behind. The screen. It is in that bodham or consciousness that everything is happening. Different souls who conduct different business in this world, but background is that screen, the consciousness. One who has touched the screen, he does not get affected by the movie anymore. That goes on. So the same word, Krishna used the word as Sthita Prajnatvam. In the second chapter, he used as the word that Sthita Prajnatvam. So, so whatever happiness or distress comes here, and whatever it goes up or down, it does not bother him anymore. That's the important point. He always aware that he is completing himself. And such a person, in his dealings with this world, Krishna is saying there will be no raga dvesham, attachment or aversion towards anything. And anything, if it comes in front of him, it will disappear from him. So that is what is known as that completeness, what we refer to as Purnamada. That completeness is this, that after self-realization or Sthita Prajna state, when a person has to deal with this world, Krishna is saying that so long as there is no ragadvesham, attachment or aversion happening inside, then his dealings with the world does not cause any problem for him after that. So, in such a state, he cannot engage in any material activities. This is the conclusion of the Acharya. One of the Acharyas are insisting that a person who has realized the self, For him, activities in this world is impossible anymore. Like a way we do the activities. Our activities are inflicted with ragam and dvesham, attachment and aversion. A realized soul, when he deals with this world, because there is no raga dvesham, it is not considered anymore karma. Karma has no influence on that. And this, they are very particular. The particular means they confirm this and they insist that this is the reality. So a person who has come to this state, he has already escaped from material existence. He is free from material existence. And in other words, he is out of the field of karma. He is out of the field of karma. And that is what it says there. Tena tetvena bunjida magrada kasya siddhanam. These words are very important because Tena tetvena bunjida, that one who has not developed ragadvesham in this world and his activities are going on continuously. If you look into the further verses in the Ishopanishad, you will see that you can do karma thousands of years in this world, it will not touch you. There is a verse which comes later. So what is the reason? It is all centered around this first verse. Tena tektvena bunjida magrada kasya siddhanam. That never should any desire must develop in a person's heart. So it says here that on this verse there is difference of opinion among the acharyas. There is difference of opinion. Shankaracharya wrote his commentary one way, insisting that there has to have a self-realization happens for him, karma cannot touch him anymore. And many others who followed him, also Madhvacharya wrote commentary about that with a little difference from that. They accept from the devotional path in a different way, they take it. Then in recent times, as you know, that there was every modern reformers or who have preached religion or Krishna consciousness or spirituality based on the Vedic literature, they have also taken Ishopanishad as an authority, including Rajneesh. Even Rajneesh has commented on Ishopanishad. And in his commentary, if you look at it, it's very brilliant commentary he wrote about that. But, as I said before, what the problems are, that because he does not respect tradition, parambara, and the authorities of the acharyas, that although he writes things very convincingly, it will not have any effect on the people. The reason being that everything is on an intellectual level. Intellectual level, it may appear convincing, and if you understand it in the proper way, it doesn't do any harm. But on the other hand, that when they comment about this, they are seeing it from a different level. They are seeing it from a different level. So, Ishavasya idam sarvam. That means everything what we see must be covered as Ishvara. Krishna's presence in everything. It is from Krishna everything has come. When we refer to Krishna, devotee will refer it as Krishna. Jnanis will refer to as the consciousness, bodham, awareness. From there, that is Krishna. Krishna, when you relate with Krishna simply in the deity form, there is a difficulty there because deity is a representation of Krishna for our understanding. Because being in the bodily concept of life, so much absorbed in the body, thinking ourselves to be these 2 hands, 2 legs, and 2 eyes, and the nose, and the identification with the body is so strong, there can only be a relationship with Krishna in a form in that way, in the temple. But when we start seeing who is Krishna, what are we referring to Krishna? Krishna's position as the absolute truth, and who is present in everyone as the soul of everybody, then our understanding has to change. And that is what it is spoken here. That so here, it mentions here that the Ishavasimidam Sarvam, when you cover the whole thing with Krishna, yet kinja jagatyam jagat, there is no world after that. There is no existence of the world separately from there. Because in Krishna's presence in everything, if you recognize, it is Krishna alone exists. Jnanis will call it as Brahman. Devotees will call it as Krishna. That's all the difference is. We make different separations in different ways. But the reality is that it's only Krishna that exists in this creation. There's nothing else exists. So, immediately we start thinking, nothing separate can exist from that. For example, when we separate from that, we exist, the world exists. If you look into any philosophy, you will see 3 factors mentioned. Jiva, Ishvara and Jagat. These 3 things interaction is what is discussed in Dvaitam, Advaitam, Vishishtadvaitam, in all philosophies, Sankhya, everywhere. Jiva, Ishvara and Jagat. What is their relationship? Jagat is the external world, Jiva is the living entity, Ishvara is the supreme controller. So these three things, when it is discussed, and whenever we see that we as a separate from the whole, we will have a problem. We will have a problem because in the wholeness we exist. In that wholeness we exist. It is from the same consciousness we have come. We at the moment who identify with the body, I am this body, body is mine, and body is my sense enjoyment. These three things. I am this body, body is mine, body is meant for my enjoyment. These three things, where did they come from? That come from avidya. Avidya means Mula Vidya they are called. Mula Vidya means very fundamental ignorance in us. And it is this what we are fighting against for the whole life, to get out of this misunderstanding that has gone in. So when it comes to that highly realized soul, they will not see any difference between them and the normal people. They do not think themselves, so I am self-realized, he is not realized. They can't look at it that way. In their realized state, they will only see Krishna's presence in other living entities. This is very important. Because once you go through Ekadasha Skandam in the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Krishna finally sends Uddhava back to Badrinath to reflect on the knowledge what Krishna has spoken or Krishna's instructions to Uddhava, Krishna says to Uddhava at that point, Uddhava, I have spoken so many things today to this point, but what I have talked to you now is something what you should seriously reflect upon. He says to Uddhava at that point. So that is why when they have reached that state of self-realization, a realized soul cannot see anymore a person purely on the bodily level. It's not possible. It's not possible for him. This is why we say, if a spiritual master is self-realized, he doesn't see his disciple anymore, he is my disciple. The relationship is changed completely. Because of the self-realization, he is seeing only the presence of the soul, Krishna's presence in that living entity. This is important. On the other hand, a devotee's relationship with the spiritual master can never change. It's always, he is spiritual master, I am the disciple. That relationship must stay. That is the thing. That is the important thing. Because when that relationship happens, the spiritual master sees the disciple no more as his disciple. He is seeing, because he is self-realized, he will always see Krishna's presence in that, and continuously that karunyam or mercy from the spiritual master flows to the disciple. Flows to the disciple. On the other hand, from the disciple's side, because the disciple hasn't reached their state of self-realization, or even after reaching the state of self-realization, with the spiritual master, the realization will remain as master and the servant, master and the disciple. That will never change. This is an important principle, because otherwise that relationship is not proper. So that's why it's mentioned. That mentions there that this is a secret what the sages have found out. This relationship is like that. It's their secret. Otherwise, you will slip from the truth. So therefore, they have insisted on this. That when the spiritual master is seeing the disciple simply as a body and seeing him as is my disciple, and then he is not spiritual master anymore. That is, and the supporting verse from that is Yasya deve parabhaktir yatha deve tadha guru tasaiva kadido hyarte pragashante mahalmana. You see, Upanishads are very precise on these things. Unlike in the Puranas, Upanishads are much more precise on these statements. Yasya deve parabhaktir yatha deve tadha guru. That means, yes, just like one has the pure devotion to Krishna and to the spiritual master, for him, taseva kadida hirte prakashane mahalpana. He will have all the knowledge, all the realizations will be revealed to him from within. From within, the revelation will happen to him. This is the Upanishad's conclusion. So in other words, one who has that relationship with Krishna, then he will have no problem. But if the spiritual master thinks he is my disciple, I am instructing him, I have told him, that means the spiritual master is also on the bodily concept of life. He has not come out of it. That's why in the Kathopanishad you will see there is a statement about this, that the verse which says that the Narena varena proktamesha suvidyayo bahuda chindyamanaha ananya prokte gadiratra nasti aniyan adarkyamanu pramanal. Narena varena proktamesha. When self-realization does not happen by taking instruction from a person who is alpajñam. Alpajñam means one who has limited knowledge. It won't help. Narena varena proktamesha, then suvidyayo bahudha chindyamanaha. Or if you think about it a lot, it won't happen. This is Kathopanishad statement. We have to take this very seriously because Bhagavad Gita and Kathopanishad is very closely linked. So Kathopanishad is saying that just because if a person is not realized the truth, by taking instructions from him will not help. Will not help. Because that person hasn't experienced himself what the truth is. So that's why I say, Narena varena proktamesha suvidyayo bahuda chindyamanaha. That even if that person who's taking the instructions from a guru, if that person suvidyayo bahuda chindyamanaha, suppose he is very intelligent, is capable of thinking a lot, capable of analyzing everything and able to think in deeper level, still it won't help. Ananya prokte gadiratra nasti. If you don't have the instruction from a realized soul, gadiratra nasti aniyan adarkyam anupramanal. Because that thing what you are looking for is the most subtle thing, subtle than the most subtle thing. It is such a subtle thing that it can only come from a person who has realized it. All other things will be just a show. It won't help. This is the Kathopanishad statement. Narena varena proktamesha suvidyayo bahuda chindyamanaha ananya prokte gadiratra nasti aniyan adarkyam anupramanal. Anupramanal says here that anupramanal, it is so subtle, sushmam. It is such a sushmam more than the most sushmam, subtle than the most subtle thing, and you can't even perceive it or conceive it in your imagination what you are looking for. So subtle is that science. It says here, Kathopanishad puts this condition that it is not possible to realize it unless you have some person who has it with him. So otherwise, whatever instructions has been given by the spiritual master, it will have no impact at all. So, Ishamasam idam sarvam. What first thing Krishna, the Upanishad says is that remove the world. World cannot exist. Get the world out from here. How? Ishamasam idam sarvam. Cover the whole thing with Krishna. Only Krishna is present in everything. Only Krishna exists. If he understands this mantra properly, this first mantra, then everything is Krishna's presence. Everything is Krishna's presence. There is many instances, devotees' realizations in this way. Namadev was a great saint among the Maharashtrian devotees, isn't it? Namadev was a famous personality. Namadev always used to leave home, go to the forest, and in that loneliness in the forest, he used to absorb in chanting the holy name. And a stage came that Namadev could not even go home for his prasadam. And the wife used to bring prasadam and leave it near Namadev when she used to go away from him. Leave everything there for him to take, and she used to go back. At one instance, when Namadev was absorbed in chanting the holy name, And prasadam was kept there. Wife has brought some chapati, some ghee and some vegetables, everything there. And she left. At one point, a dog came and started eating the chapati, pulled the chapati packet and pulled out from there, gone away with the chapatis. Suddenly Namdev woke up and to the same senses saw the dog running away with the chapati. Normal situation, what would have done? We would have chased the dog, isn't it? But what did Namdev say to the dog? Namdev says to the dog, Namdev is saying in the dog, why now Namdev's realization has gone so high. Namdev is seeing Panduranga, which is the deity where Namdev used to worship Krishna. Only Panduranga in that dog. So when he saw that, he's not seeing the dog anymore in the dog's body. Rather he is seeing Panduranga's presence in that dog's body. And he says to the dog that don't go away with chapati, there is ghee there. You will find it very difficult to eat without the ghee. This was Namdev's words to the dog. So what I am saying is that when self-realization comes to that stage, it is impossible to change our dealings with the world. It will happen in a natural way, and that you cannot do anything about it. Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita, if you look, Ekada Bahuta. One verse you will see there in 13th chapter. So, Ekada Bahuta. First, inside you have to see yourself what you are. Once you have seen that, then you will see everything else is nothing but the same thing that is made of outside. This is how self-realization works. First we try to see Krishna everywhere. It won't work like that. But if you try to think that everybody Krishna's presence in everyone, Shastram says like that, isn't it? Sarva Bodeshu Yapashil Bhagavad Bhavam Atmana Budani Bhagavatyesha Savai Bhagavadottamaha. Bhagavatam says like that, isn't it? The first class devotee is who? Sarva Bodeshu Yapashil. In all living entities, there is only Krishna who is present. And in all living entities who is present, Krishna is present. This is the perfection of realization. Who says this? Hari Maharshi says this to King Nimi. In the Bhagavatam you can see the Rajaskanda. Sarva Bhudeshu ya pashed Bhagavad Bhavam Almanaha. That Bhagavad Bhavam, presence of Krishna's presence in every living entity. And Budani Bhagavati Esha. And all living entities are living in that Bodham, Krishna. Savai Bhagavadottama. He is a first class devotee. It says there in the Bhagavatam. So you can connect that verse with this Ishavasamidam Sarvam. It is nothing but another way of expressing the same principle in the Ishopanishad. So, so basically that our consciousness, when we think from the Jnani's point of view, our understanding is we are Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Swarupam. Eternal, pure, fully conscious, always liberated. This is our spiritual nature of the soul. All other things are superimposed on the soul. Soul's identity is like this. Soul's definition is like that. Nityam, Shuddham, Buddham, Mukta. Nitya means eternal, Shuddham is always pure, Buddha means always conscious, and Mukta means always liberated. It is not touched by anything. Actually, Srimad Bhagavatam is very interesting. When we study so much about karma, we study so much about the mind, we study about the planets, their influence on us, astrology and all that. And after saying all this, Krishna says at the end that in Bhikshugita, Krishna says that Na devadalpa grihakarmagalaha Nayam janome sukadukha hetu. Bhikshu is singing this song. He says, karma is not responsible, planets are not responsible, my time is not responsible, nothing is responsible for this situation what I am in. Manaparam karanamamanandi samsara jakram parivartaye bhul. So after saying kalam, karmam, planets, everything responsible for our present state, eventually Krishna is saying none of them are responsible. This is the way Krishna presented it in the Bhagavatam. Manaparam karanamamanandi samsara chakram parivartaye bhul. It is an important point because when you read Bhagavad Gita also, the same problem will come. The same situation what Bhagavatam is talking about. For example, he says here that the principle of Krishna's presence in everything. If you look into Kapila Maharshi's instructions to Devahudi Devi, you will find there also Arhaye danamanabhyam maitreya bhinnena chakshusha. He says that when you see a person, Arhaye danamanabhyam, one who worships me in the temple in the deity form, Kapila Vasudeva says he is not considered in my eye as a great devotee. He doesn't think that as a devotee symptom. What is then Arhaye danamanabhyam maitra bhinnena chakshusha? That one who pleases others, all others, Arhaye danamanabhyam, according to one's capacity, maitreya abhinena chakshusha, one who shows friendship to others without seeing his separation from Krishna. In other words, Krishna's presence in that living entity, and one who offers respects to everyone from that platform, he is dear to me. Kapila Vasudeva says this to Devahudi Devi in the 3rd canto. In the Bhagavatam we can read this. Arhayed dhanam anabhyam maitreya bhinnena chakshusha. This is a very important concept. Bhagavatam is not telling us straight away that throw away everything and move to a loneliness or stay in a temple. It says to us, living in this world, while in this body, how to change our relationship with this world. That is Bhagavata Dhamma. Bhagavata Dhamma, if you understand it properly, you can see that even while within this body, even while living within this body, in this mind, and this intelligence, and with this ego senses everything, how one can change oneself. As I said before, 2 things. One is our Swarupam, and the other one is our Swabhavam. Swarupam is same for everyone. Swabhavam is different. It is while staying in the Swarupam, to change the Swabhavam. That is what Krishna is talking about in the Bhagavad Gita also. For example, a person who is hungry, you have to give him food. That is a worship. That is a worship. But even while giving food to a person, there are so many things to know behind it. It is with the understanding that if you look into Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying there that Aham Vaishwanaro Bhaktva Praninam Dehamashridam. If you see Vaishwanara is eating, who is Vaishwanara? Vaishwanara is Krishna. In everyone's body, when we have hunger, where is it coming from? It's coming from Vaishwanara. Vaishwanara inside is generating that desire inside, or let us know that we need something to eat, isn't it? So, Aham Vaishwanara Bhutva. So, present inside in that Jadaragni, or the fire of digestion, or inside in the stomach, who is demanding that, that's coming from Krishna. So, person who gives food to him, he, with that understanding, he is giving the food properly. Otherwise, it's wrong. For example, many people think giving food to others is a pious activity, isn't it? It's a pious activity, considered to be a pious activity. It is, if you take it as a pious activity and if you give food to others, what will happen is you will get pious results, but that will not relieve you from cycle of birth and death. You have to come back again to experience that pious activity. In order to experience that, you have to come back again. You are not relieved from the karma, from the cycle of karma. It is an important thing because Krishna is saying, Arhaye dhanamanabhyam maitrabhinena chakshusha. If you are giving food to someone, fully knowing that Krishna is eating the food, staying within that body, then that offering is with proper knowledge, with proper understanding. If you are giving food to someone with the understanding that it is a pious thing, I'll get some credit from that. Yes, you will get the credit, no doubt, but you will have to accept another body to experience that credit. It will not help you to get out of the cycle of birth and death. So you can see that the same activity in knowledge is different than when it is performed without proper knowledge. So that's another important thing. So while giving food also, it is important to know Krishna is eating. That is why we sometimes analyze these things, isn't it? That we gave pranapsadam to so many people, or some feeling like that can develop inside. But understanding should be, the correct understanding is, Krishna is saying there that if the food is given with the understanding of Krishna's presence in that living entity, then that is the proper way to. Otherwise, what will happen is that false pride will come inside. false pride will come inside. Just like if you're giving food to the dog, or if you're giving food to the cat, thinking, oh, it's a cat, I have to give him something to the cat. If you start giving food like that, that only becomes a pious activity, it's not a spiritual activity. Similarly, if you give food to the dog in the same way, it's a pious activity, but it's not a spiritual activity. That is the underlying principle behind it. That's what it means. That's why when it comes to Bhagavad Dharma, everything changes its nature. Arhaye danamanabhyam maitra abhinena chakshusha. Kapila Vasudeva said everything in one line. That if you don't recognize Krishna's presence in another body and offer food, and that Krishna is taking the food, and in that mood if you offer, that is not binding. That will not bind. On the other hand, it can happen the opposite way also. This you can see that this understanding of Krishna's presence in other living entities is sometimes very difficult also. Very difficult also. For example, you can see sometimes parents, they bring up children. When they bring up children, they, especially in the when they are small children, they demand so many things. And parents think that I have to provide everything what they are asking for to please them. They keep giving everything, but what you have to remember here is very important thing. When we do something to someone, you have to know what is hitam, not priyam. Priyam means to please him, we are doing something. Hitam means what is good for him. I will tell you why it is like that. When somebody accepts a material body, he is coming with a lot of ubhadis. Ubhadi means mind is an ubhadi. Material body is an ubhadi. Intelligence is an ubhadi. He wants to get over these ubhadis. That is why he has come to this world. That is very clear, isn't it? That he has come to this world accepting a material body, intelligence and mind, everything, because he had to accept it due to his own vasanas, what he has created inside. Now, when he had come here, naturally all these vasanas will start coming out in some form or the other. Say, for example, the child is demanding chocolate all the time. Father and mother is thinking, let me give him as much chocolate as he wants and make him happy. If you take that approach, that child will never able to get over that vasana inside in him. Just because he has got that desire, if you continuously feed him with everything, and that is what it is said, that is you are doing priyam to him, but not hitam. It is not hitam, it is priyam. Hitam means, you can see, if you observe people, you will see this. When parents have controlled their children seriously in their childhood, they have, after growing, when they are about 30, 40 years old, they have felt a lot of respect to the parents for being strict like that. Because the jiva is trying to fight against its own vasana inside. It is trying to come out of its own ubhadi. Body is a ubhadi. Ubhadi means it's binding you. And he continuously, if you supply everything what he is asking, that child will eventually lose all its strength to come out of the ubhadi. It cannot escape from the ubhadi. And that is why parents were very strict during the childhood. When they are strict with the parents, the same children, when they grow up by the age of 35, 40, they start seeing their own parents very much in a divine relationship with the parents. This happens in this world. On the other hand, parents who have continuously given all sorts of pleasure to the children, they have turned against also. Opposite way after they have grown up, because inside there is a strong difficulty they are experiencing. They want to come out of their weakness, and you are not helping that by providing things. Somebody has to make that strong decision from inside. This is the point, that the hitam is important, priyam is not important, and especially in relationship with the children. So that is the important point. So what you are saying here was that Krishna says here, in this verse it says here, Ishavasya idam sarvam yat kinja jagatyam jagat Tena tatvena gunchita magrada kasasya dhanam. Tasya Siddhanam. So, there, you will see one important thing. Mentions the word, yeah, these children and so Jiva, when it comes to this world, it is under the control of Upadhi. It is under the control of Upadhi. So on its own, it's difficult for the Jiva to fight against Upadhi. That we should know that. We can see ourselves. We are trying to fight against our own Upadhi, isn't it? The body, the mind, intelligence, everything. In different ways, it affects us. It hits us in different ways. So on its own, it is difficult for the child also to fight against Upadhi. So when that is a situation, if you want to really do good for the child, what you should do is to do the right thing and not try to please the child. This is the important thing. Not try to please the child. If you don't give it to the child, he will get angry for not giving it to him. But by giving to him, he will be happy with you. But if you're not given him, somewhere inside he will get a benefit, which later on he will find it as a great help. This is the principle behind it. So actually, therefore, doing good to others means doing hitam, what is good for him, not doing what is pleasing to him. So, what will ultimately help him to reach the goal, in that way you have to help every jiva. What will help the person to reach the goal? That is more important. And that goal is spiritual. It cannot be material happiness. So whatever that will help a person ultimately to reach the goal, if you do that, you are doing the right thing. But instead, if you think that also in the modern charitable activities of this world, many things are based on this principle, that we will try to do as much as possible for the benefit of the body, or to please that person, to alleviate his misery. That is not the right thing to do. That is what the Ishopanishad's point is. Ishopanishad is saying that do what is good for that person, because every jiva, every living entity, when he comes to this world, he has this big handicap of Upadhi in him. And on its own, the jiva cannot fight its Upadhi. That's very clear, isn't it? We all know that. On our own, we can't fight it out. Therefore, we are taking the shelter of Shastram, association of devotees, association of the enlightened souls. Why do we take their help? Because we are finding ourselves difficult to fight against Upadhi. Whereas, if you have a realized soul with whom you are in touch, seeing that person's strength, you will escape from your Upadhi. After all, what is self-realization mean? Self-realization means freeing yourself from this body, mind, intelligence, ego, all senses, everything. That is self-realization, isn't it? To realize the truth. And on your own, it is difficult to do that. It's not possible, because you have come here with such an amount of vasanas behind, that you can't fight it on your own. That is where you need the help from others. So if what is good for you is not given, but rather what is pleasing and helping your vasanas to fulfill, and if that way, if the help is coming, then that's not going to help. So each and every contact with another person actually should ignite this fire of the knowledge of the self. That is the important principle. That in relationship with other people, in spiritual life, if you have contact with another person, if it's igniting the fire of the knowledge of the self, that spiritual relationship is good. But on the other hand, if it is dragging you further into the bodily concept of life and taking you to the bodily way of life, then that attachment is useless. It is not going to help. So if that happens, there is no material existence. So, practically, whenever we are in contact with anyone, at any point in time, this fire of knowledge is burning inside. Jnanagni. Krishna says that. Jnanagni sarvakarmanam. So, sometimes we do not make any contact with that. Therefore, Janaka says in the Ashtavakra Gita also, you will see this statement from Janaka, says, when Mithila was burning, Janaka is saying, I am not affected by that. I am sitting right in the middle of a forest. This was his statement. Why? There is no connection anywhere. So when one has come to that state, Ashtavakra, Janaka, as I mentioned before, Janaka's statement in that Ashavakra Gita says like this, that the he says that right time although aho janasamuhevi na dvaidam pashyado mama aranyamiva samvrittam kvaratim karavanyaham. He says that aho janasamuhevi, although I am in the middle of so many people, na dvaidam pashyado mama, I am not seeing anyone separate. In other words, the realization is so complete within him that he only is seeing the soul in everyone. He says, aho janasamuhevi, although you are saying I am in the middle of so many people, na dvaidam pashyado mama aranyam iva samvrittam, I am right in the middle of a forest, kvaratim karavanyaham. So why should I look for happiness anywhere? You can see in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna quotes King Janaka as the one of the finest examples of Karma Yoga, if you remember, in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Why Janaka's position was so high in self-realization, Krishna could not keep him away from the Bhagavad Gita also. So that is the important point. So, and Krishna also says this, that while talking about this, that so if you look into Bhagavad Gita, you will see there Krishna says to Arjuna that all these kings in the Mahabharata times, that they were fighting each other. All the kings were fighting each other. And prior to that, Krishna says that in the Solar dynasty, the kings were jnanis. They were realized souls. They did not have this problem at all. In other words, although they executed karma, they did not go against the jnanam. Jnanam was behind even while executing karma. This was the greatness of the kings of the Solar dynasty. But when it came to the Lunar dynasty, which is Krishna's dynasty, in other words, Krishna says there that these Mahabharata war times, the kings have fallen away from the truth. That was their greatest fall down. That they have fallen away from the truth, and the result of that was that Krishna says that they have lost it completely. So a person, if you compare the kings who ruled in the Solar dynasty, and if you compare to those kings who ruled in the Lunar dynasty, you will see this difference very well. The rulers or the kings of the Solar dynasty, they were all fixed in the knowledge. In other words, they lived in this world, they conducted their business, but at the old age, they left everything and went to the forest. They had that focus. They were very focused on that, on the path of self-realization. When it came to Lunar dynasty, Krishna is saying there that these kings, by the time Mahabharata war happened, they completely lost the goal and fully absorbed in the karma. They started fighting and calling each other without any proper knowledge in them. And therefore, Krishna says, we have to have this war, Mahabharata war. And it is at that point you will see that this first mantra, what we have shown here in this Ishopanishad, the same thing, if you look into the 6th mantra also, is the same principle. Krishna talks again. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanu pashyadi sarva bhuteshu jatmanam tatona vijigutsade. Very important. It is the reflection of the same understanding that yastu sarvani bhutani atmani eva anipashyati. Krishna says, so Upanishad is saying that yastu sarvani bhutani, in all living entities, altmani eva anipashyati, only he is seeing the soul, nothing else. Sarva bhuteshu chaltmanam tatona vijigupsadem. That, and because sarva bhuteshu chaltmanam, it is the same soul who is present in everyone, tatona vijigupsadem. He does not feel any hate towards anyone. In other words, Raga Dvesham will not happen to a person who has come to that state of self-realization. This is the most important point. So you can see that Ishavasam idam sarvam, what happens? This is what is spoken in the remaining verses. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anubhashyadi sarva bhuteshu jalpanam tatona vijigupsadem. So for such a person, he has no more Raga Dvesham anywhere. One who has realized the self, who has done Ishavasam idam sarvam. Ishavasam idam sarvam means everything is covered by Krishna. Everything is where Krishna is present in every living entity, and that realization has happened to him. If that has happened to him, what will happen is Yastu Sarvani Bhutani Atmanyeva Anipashyati. He will only see the soul in other living entities, and Sarvabhodeshu Jalpmanam Tatoma Vijigupsade. And because he is seeing only the soul, there will not be any ragadvesham in that person anymore. So these remaining mantras in the Ishopanishad is only a explanation of that first verse, Ishavasyam Idam Sarvam. So, and the same thing, if you look into the seventh mantra also, after that you will see in the seventh mantra also Krishna says the same principle. Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Atmaiva Bhut Vijanata Tatrago Moha Kashogaha Egatvam Anivashyadi. All these verses are very closely connected to each other. If you have understood the first verse, Eshavasya Vidam Sarvam, Ekincha Jagatyam Jagat, such a person who has done that, what will be his experience after that? That is the remaining verses. It's very easy that way. The first verse conveys the whole Ishopanishad, Ishavasya Vidam Sarvam, Etkincha Jagatyam Jagat. If that verse is understood very well, then the remaining verses are very simple to follow. Because he says here, Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Atmaiva Bhut Vijanada. One who has sees all living entities as spiritual sparks. Atmaiva Bhut Vijanada. Purely as on the platform of the soul. Tatra ko mohaha ko shokaha. For him there is a hankering or lamentation. Because there is no ragam, no dvesham inside. He has no hankering or he has no lamentation inside. Why? Egatvam Anivashyadi. He is only seeing the oneness of the soul in everybody. This is Ishopanishad. Ishopanishad is confirming to us that when one reaches that state, when one he is seeing, first of all, before seeing Egatvam, soul's presence in other living entity, we have to realize who we are first. After we have realized who we are, immediately you will know it is the same thing what is inside us, what we consider we are, is the same thing what is outside in everybody. That is that Egatvam. Egatvam is that what is inside us as the presence of the spiritual spark inside, when that is realized as our identity, immediately we will see that it is the same spark who is present in everyone, and that is the way to see Krishna's presence in other living entity. And that's what Krishna is saying in this verse, saying, seventh mantra is saying, Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani Atmaiva Bhut Vijanataha Tatra Ko Moha Kashogaha Egatvam Anipashyati. That for him where is moham, there is shogam, he says here. Where is moha, where is shogam. And what then can the illusion or anxiety for him? So, if you keep on reading, Ishopanishad there is only 18 mantras. And this first mantra delivers the whole message of Ishopanishad. And it is an amazing mantra, Ishavasanidam Sarvam. Nowhere else you will find this concept to cover everything with Krishna. In all other religion processes, we think we stay here, God is somewhere up there, in some other place. We are trying to connect with Him. But in the Vedic philosophy, particularly in the Upanishads, they do not accept that. They think if there is a God, He is here right now. Otherwise, where is the validity for everything? You can say, going back home, back to God, and all this ultimately is this realization that takes us to that point. Otherwise, it could be like any other religious process. It doesn't make any sense anything more than that. So, Ishavasya Idam Sarvam Yakin Jagatyam Jagat. So, important thing is to cover everything with Krishna. Cover everything with Krishna. And every object, not only living entities, everything. Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat. In other words, we can't see anything separate from Krishna. Tena Tektvena Bunjidam. Because by covering like that, we are actually breaking us away from that. In other words, you can give up our connection with everything else. When you accept that everything is Krishna who is present here, then your tendency to take ownership of other things in this world will go, isn't it? At the moment, because we don't see Krishna's presence in anything, we take ownership of everything. That is how this material existence continues in this world. we think it's ours. Everything is ours. And Krishna lives somewhere in Bhaktivedanta Manor. He has got 80-acre estate or whatever. We live it like that. And we are separate. We have nothing to do with it. I live in my house. Krishna lives in his house. This is the most of the understanding is like that. We'll go and see him once a week or once in a few days, and we will sing some songs and come back. But that's not spiritual, very spiritual. Spiritual understanding is when you accept Ishavanishad. Ishavanishad is saying to us that you can only cover everything with Krishna and accept that it is Krishna's tena tektvena bunchida, and then you can live in this world. Otherwise you have no right to live in this world. Tena tektvena bunchida ma grida kasya siddhanam. That verse is such a revelation to many scholars, not only in the Vedic tradition, other places also, that they were amazed by this depth of understanding, that Ishvara sarvabhutanam hrideshe Arjuna tishtari. That Krishna's presence in us, if we don't recognize it, what good is it at the end? So many things we can talk about, we have did so many big things in this world, but ultimately, right in front of us, Krishna is present in all different bodies, and if we do not recognize it and accept it, what is the spiritual understanding from that? So, if you do like that, Krishna says, you will not fall. You will not fall. Otherwise, if that means if you don't feel that separation, that is, the Ishavasya Idam Savam, after covering everything from Krishna, by Krishna, the moment you see a person as a person, you will fall. That means if you start seeing the person in a bodily level, immediately you have fallen down. You finished. Then your spiritual life is over. Then you have to start, you can chant millions of years sitting at one place. It will not help. If you look into Srimad Bhagavatam, you will see that Krishna talks about it in a very strong voice to Uddhava before he left for Badrinath. If you look into Bhagavatam, it says there that I'll read those few verses which are connected with this Ishavanishad verses. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Padasvabhava karmani na prashamsan nagrahayet vishwamegalpagam pashyan pragritya purushena cha. Krishna says, Uddhava, Padasvabhava karmani na prashamset nagrahayet. Another person's swabhavam or his karma, that means his nature, a person's nature or his activities is not to be spoken about. Na prashamsayet na garhet. You don't have to glorify it, nor you have to condemn it. Why? Vishwam egalpagam pashyan. See, from the level where Krishna is talking about, he is saying, Vishwam egalpagam pashyan. In this world there is only one thing. What is that? The soul. There's only soul exists in this whole creation. But from that soul, Pragritya Purushanaja, two things came about. One is Purusha, another one is Prakriti. Purusha and Prakriti according to Sankhya. Jnana Yogam doesn't accept that way. Jnana Yogam only accepts a soul. Only purely the presence of the soul. So, Parasvabhava Karmani, Na Prashamsen Nagarhaye, Vishwam Egalpagam Pashyan, Prakritya Purushena Cha. Then what does he say? Parasvabhava Karmani, Ya Prashamsadi Nindadi. Now, if one does not take this seriously, and one starts continuously analyzing others' activities and start glorifying them or condemning them, Ya Prashamsadi Nindadi, he is already fallen, Krishna said. Sa Ashu Brashyade. He is already fallen down. Why? Because Swartha Asatyam Abhiniveshada. He is holding on to the falsity of this world. When we engage in the condemnation of others' activity or condemnation of others' swabhavam, in a realized state it will not happen. Because at that point in time, the swabhavam and swarupam is known to the realized soul. The realized soul sees only the swarupam. Conditioned soul sees only the swabhavam. This is the difference. In the conditioned state, we see the swabhavam of a person. In the realized state, we see the swarupam of a person. Krishna's point is, if you are only seeing the swabhavam, where you are likely to prashamsadi or nindadi, glorify or condemn anyone, sa ashu brashyade, he is not on a spiritual platform anymore. Because asatyam abhiniveshada, he has caught hold of the falsity. He is holding on to the false branch of the tree, which will collapse any moment. That's, in other words, spiritually he has fallen. This is Krishna's point. Of course, this is spoken at the last minute when Uddhava was leaving. After talking 27 chapters, it is the last chapter where Krishna is talking about it. Then, he gives example to that. He says, Taijase nidrayabane pindasto nashta chedanaha mayam prapnodi mrityuma tadvan manarthadat pumat. It's very nice the way Krishna puts it. Taijase nidrayabane. Then, when the senses, when they are affected by by sleep. Just for example, when we are sitting here, suddenly we feel tired. And what happens? We fall into the sleep mode, isn't it? So, sleep mode. The senses are demanding rest from inside. The senses want a rest. Senses cannot interact anymore. That's why when you feel sleepy, isn't it? You feel sleepy, senses tells the mind, let's go into the sleepy mode. Sleep will go into that. So Krishna says, Taijasam nidrayabane pindasto nashta chedana. What happens at that time is that Jiva immediately move into the Maya state of Swapnam. Dream state comes in. We don't go into deep sleep. We go into kind of a, what do you say, a semi state where we are not awake, but you are in a dream experience is coming through at that stage, isn't it? Dream experience. So, pindasto nashta chedana. He has lost his ability to think or to control himself in any way. He cannot think with clarity, because at that time you can see how powerful the sleep is, isn't it? When the sleep takes over, we all surrender. You know, suppose you haven't had sleep for say a week or so, you didn't get good sleep for various reasons, whatever it may be, and all. And then suddenly somebody says to you, I'll give you £1 million if you can stay for another few days without sleep. You will say, no, I'll have the sleep, not the £1 million. So powerful that element is, isn't it? The sleep. So it is to indicate to us, as I mentioned before, this Jagrat, Swapnam, Sushupti, all three states has its own reason why it has come into existence. So in the Swapnam state is the state which is teaching us how creation has happened in this world. How creation has happened in this world. You can see, as soon as you go into this dream state, what's happening? You create a world of your own, isn't it? And where is that coming from? It's coming from you. You are creating that. Krishna, the Acharyas are telling us that just like you create a world of your own in the dream state, this world, what is manifested in front of you in the vacant state, is also not different. Why you think that this world is real and that world is dream? This is their question to us. Prabhupada used to say this also. He said the only difference is this is a short dream, this is a long dream. What we are experiencing. Practically there is no other difference. But we think that this dream is real and that dream is false. So who are we to make this judgment? Shastram is telling us that is a dream, this is a dream. That is a shorter period, this is a longer period. That's all. And that's what Krishna is saying here. Taijase nidrayabane pindasto nashta chedana. You have lost your chedana, or your ability to hold on to the truth. As soon as you fall into the dream state, that's what happened. Mayam prapnodi mrityumva tadvan manartha drik puman. So eventually, when you go into the dream state, after a while, the mind also dissolves, isn't it? And then you have the best in the world, the deep sleep state. So when the deep sleep state happens, you have completely lost your identity at that time. Chaitanya has no influence at all at that time, and it's practically like a death state. Practically like a death state. At that Sushupti state is like that, isn't it? Your awareness is gone completely, and you see practically the difference between Sushupti and liberated state is like this. In Sushupti state, you are not experiencing the blissful state of the soul, nor you are not experiencing the spiritual identity either, because there is a strong cover of Maya there, strong cover of Maya's presence in there. So, just like soul has three different names, depending on the three states, you know. It's called Vishwam in the vacant state, it's called Taijasan in the dream state, and it's called Prajnan in the Sushupti state. It will come in the 12th canto later, when we discuss that, we'll see. Vishwan, Taijasam, Prajnam. Based on Jagrat, Swapnam, Sushupti. It is the function of the soul or the state of the soul in these three different states is important. In the Vishwan state, I am there, the body is there, the mind is there, the senses are there, I am there. When you move into the dream state, body is gone, but mind is there, I am there. So because of that, the soul at that state is called Taijasam. His state is, he is not identifying with the body at that state. Is it not? When you are in the vacant state, you are completely in identification with the body. So when the soul is in identification with the body, it is called Vishwan. When it moves from Vishwan state to Taijasa state, that means when he is in identification with the mind, not with the body, he is called Taijasam. When he leaves the mind also and completely falls into Sushupti state, he is called Prajna. So when the soul is addressed in three different states, he is addressed in three different ways. Here, Krishna is saying here, Taijase nidrayavane pindasto nashta chetanaha. And mayam prapnodi mrutyumva tadvan nanarthadrik puman. So as soon as you move into the Sushupti or the deep sleep state, you have lost all your sense enjoyment in this world. You are not enjoying senses anymore, isn't it? That is called Bhoga Brahmsha. Bhoga Brahmsha means, Bhogam is that what you enjoy through your senses, mind, everything. That is Bhogam. That Bhogam is finished. Bhoga Brahmsha has happened. In the same way, Krishna is saying here, in your vacant state, if you identify with the body, as soon as you identify with the Swabhavam of a person, you will lose your Swarupam straight away. This is Krishna's conclusion on that. It is something very interesting to think about. When you have time, take these verses and look at it. How Krishna is pointing out to us certain very, very subtle things in life, what's happening day in and day out in us, but we don't give attention to. We don't give any attention to. We think, deep sleep, very good time, good sleep. When we tell everybody I had a good sleep, and that's all we learned from the sleep. We didn't learn anything from the sleep. We just slept, that's all. And then came back to the same body again and comfortable with the body for the rest of the life. This way we exist. This is called avidya. Avidya means all this. Whereas Jnanis, they think about it in depth. They think in the Sushupti state, what happened to us? The bhogam, the happiness what we are experiencing through the mind and the senses, through the mind in the dream state, and through the senses in the vacant state, we lose that when we move into the Sushupti state, when we are in the Prajna stage. Krishna is saying here that Taijase nidrayavane pindasto nashta chetana. When you are moved from the vacant state to the dream state, how you have lost all that happiness what you are getting from the senses. Because there your mind is experiencing at that time. Similarly, mayam prapnodi mrityum va tadvan anarthadrik puman. Mayam prapnodi mrityum va. Then if you are connected with Maya, if Maya is controlling you, you are under influence of Maya, what will happen is that as soon as you move into Nanarthadrika means that all this variety will come to you, varieties of existence. This variety in this world we consider very important, isn't it? The science is telling us more and more variety. Break everything and bring more variety to it. They said first there's molecules and then atoms and then protons and electrons and neutrons and they are still trying to break it further and see if there is something more deeper than that. But Vedantam and Bhagavatam is telling us that this breaking one after the other everything is not going to get you anywhere. There is only one thing that is present in everything. Realize that one thing and you will get to the realization of the truth. That is the difference. So, Maya prapnodi mrityumva tadvan anarthadrik puman. After saying this, Krishna says to Uddhava, very important thing. He says, you are telling me this is right and this is wrong in this world. Kim Bhadram, Kim Abhadram. What is right and what is wrong in this world? He says, Dvaidasya vastuna kiyad, vajo adidam tad amradam manasad dhyadam evacham. Very important point. He says here, Kim Bhadram, Kim Abhadram. You are, from your own mind, you are creating what is right and what is wrong in this world. And And Dvaidasya Vastuna Kiyat, all this has come from your duality. And Vachodidam Tadanurdam Manasodhyatam Eva. Anything that you are perceiving with your senses and the mind is all false. Anything that you are perceiving with your mind and the senses is totally false. Krishna is saying. And we give so much importance to the false things in the world, isn't it? So that is, in that one line, Krishna has put the truth to Uddhava. Krishna says to Uddhava, Kim Badram Kim Abhadram Va Dvaidasya Vastu Nakiyat Vachodidam Tad Anurdam. Anurdam means it's a lie, it's a false thing. Manasodhyatam Eva. Everything that you have created in your mind, because the world exists because the mind exists. If there is no mind, the world doesn't exist, isn't it? So Manasodhyatam Eva. From the word mind, the world has come. From the mind, the world has come. Very realized personalities, I mentioned also before, they know that this world and creation is coming from inside. Coming from inside. Sometimes when you invite them, come to America, come to Europe, or come to one place or the other, they will always say that they are already there inside me. They are already present inside me. There is no need for me to go to another place. Because Egatvam, Pashyadam, Egatvam, that oneness has come to them. They have already realized that Tadvam Nanarthadrik has gone, that oneness has come to them, that realization has come to them. After saying that, Krishna is asking this question to Uddhava. Uddhava, if this body is a false thing, then why this fear is coming to us? That's an interesting question, isn't it? We all have great fear about this body. That if everything body is false, as far as Krishna is concerned, this body doesn't exist. It has come, it's go. It is not your Swarupam. That is why in the second chapter, Krishna very precisely points out Nasade Vidyate Bhavo. Isn't it? He said there that Nasado Vidyate Bhavo, Na Bhavo Vidyate Sada. That statement is so important in the Bhagavad Gita that it is based on that statement Krishna is saying all these things. All these statements in the Bhagavatam is based on that understanding. That truth, what exists, always exists. It cannot be destroyed. What does not have any existence, you cannot give existence to it. This truth, Krishna says, has already been established by the realized souls. That is how Krishna puts it. Krishna says, this particular principle, that what has got reality, that reality will always be there in all circumstances. You cannot take it away from that. Which is real, that's a real thing forever. What is not real, you cannot give reality to it. That is why Krishna is saying, material body, this gross material world, you cannot give reality to it. They are not real. Based on this principle, Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sada. Ubhayoravi drishtvanam stanayor tattvadarshvi. We have to accept this. Why? Because if you take Srimad Bhagavatam, when Krishna shook hands with Brahma and spoke the Charishloki Bhagavatam to him, the first thing he said to Brahma was this point. He says, originally what exists, that alone exists. And if it is existing in the beginning, and if it is existing at the end, that means it has existence. If something else comes in the middle, it is not a reality. This is the fundamental principle in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That what exists in the beginning and what exists in the end, if it is the same, that is reality. What exists in middle, all these things are happening. Creation happens, so many changes happens in this world, but they are all constantly changing. And anything that is changing has no reality in it. The principle. So it says here, Chayana pratyahaya bhasa asando arthagarinaha evam dehadeyo bhava echandya amutido bhayam. It says here, then in normal our life in this world, Chaya pratyahaya bhaso. Then suppose there is a reflection of us in the water, or when the sound is reflecting, or just like when you see the snake and the rope, although they are all false, still it is creating some emotions in us, isn't it? Just like if you see a rope and mistake it for a snake, that there is some effect of that on us, although it's not real. That is Krishna's point. Chaya pratyahaya bhasa asando pyarthakarana. Because it's creating some impact on us. Similarly, echandya mrityuto bhayam. Similarly, although this material body is a false thing, it will still create problem for you because of what is known as adhyasam. Adhyasam means, this is called adhyasam. Adhyasam is like this, that I see the rope and due to adhyasam I misunderstood it as snake, isn't it? So when you misunderstand the rope as a snake, although rope is lying there rope, but it has created an impact on me in the form of a fear inside of the snake. Similarly, Krishna is saying here, although the soul has nothing to do with the material body, but because adhyasam there inside, the material body's problems of the material body can still have an impact on you. This is very important. It's very important. That we think that, of course we don't think like that, we think that I'm this body whole day, so we don't have any problems. But Krishna's point is very valid. If you use your logic and if you start seeing that subtle level what Krishna is explaining, then you can see. Otherwise, why Srirajari Swamiji wrote all such an exhaustive commentary on this Ekadasha Skandam, particularly Sridhara Swami's commentary is famous because of this commentary on the Ekadasham. So here, he says here, that Chaya pratyahaya bhasa asando pyarthakarana. Krishna's question is like this, evam dehadeyo bhava echandya mritito bhayam. We have fear of death, isn't it? We are saying that we are not this body. Then why should I be fearful about death? This is the question. And the answer Krishna is giving through this example, that when the rope is lying there, rope has not changed, it is still the rope. But if I mistook it as the snake, immediately that snake has created a fear in me. Exactly in the same way, I'm not this body, but somehow or the other I took myself as this body. The result is that I have to experience the fear of death because of that. This is why Krishna says, the first and the foremost thing one can do in this life is to get out of this bodily identity. There is no other solution to this problem. There is no other shortcut, there is no other solution. You can do anything in this world, but if you don't come out of this understanding of the soul and our identity with the soul, we are in trouble. And Krishna says it will definitely create anartham. You cannot get out of it. You got to face through, because adhyasam is there. Adhyasayam it is called. If you study Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that there also in a different way. But the principle is this, that but after saying all these things, Krishna says that in the world when you look, does not all the living entities exist? They do exist. And is it possible from day one itself to see in every living entity Krishna's presence? No, it's not possible. So in the beginning, we have to recognize this variegatedness in the creation. That is unavoidable. That is when spiritual life starts. But as much as spiritual life progresses, Krishna says, Alpaiva tadidam vishwam srijyade srijyadi prabhu trayade tradi vishwalpa hriyade harade ishwaraham. He says here that Alpaiva tadidam vishwam srijyade srijyadi prabhu. Alpaiva tadidam vishwam. The whole creation, Vishwam, creation, is all based on Alpa. Alpa is the basis in which everything is happening. As I mentioned the example, there is the screen, the movie is going on in the screen, isn't it? If you identify with the movie, you will experience happiness and distress. Is it not? Some people you can see that, like not here so much. In India, because movie is a big industry. In India, this is the Bollywood, Hollywood, Chollywood, all wood are there. So thousands of people expect. Now, of course, the television has come and it's becoming less. But at one time, this cinema industry was the biggest industry. Some people, they have a morning show, then a matinee, and then the first show, and the second show. And they will see the same movie 4 times. They'll go to the cinema theatre because there is no other thing in their life to do. So they'll get in at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and the morning show finishes about, say, 1 o'clock. Come out, have lunch, and go back to see the same movie what they're seeing at 2 o'clock. And they'll watch till 6. and they'll come out, have some cup of tea or something, and they'll go back at 7 to see the first show, and then watch that till 10 o'clock, come back, and then go to the second show, the same movie 4 times. They'll watch that movie. So, and majority of these movies are all distress, stories of distress only. Very rarely you will find anything ends in happiness. And they will go there, watch this movie, and they will cry. They'll cry. And after crying once or twice at least, you'll think they'll stop it. No, they'll go again to cry, to enjoy these movies. And they will sit there and watch this, and again next day also, if time allows, they'll go for the second movie. And they'll think it was amazing. Because some people want to cry, and when they see all these sad things happening in the movie, they identify with the hero and the heroine and the villain or whatever is there. It's all very popular, but it's changing now. Now movies are not getting that much because so many serials have come now. They have taken over from everything. So some people, you can observe this in the television when they watch, they are waiting in the serial what's going to happen tomorrow. And they will not sleep tonight because what's going to happen tomorrow in the serial is going to disturb their night. So there are people like that. Ordinarily, people are pulled by all these things, isn't it? So what I'm saying is that once you know that this is a movie, but behind that there is a screen where it's happening. That is what Krishna is saying here. Atmaiva tadidam vishwam srijyate srijati prabhu. That in Atma, the soul is the screen, and from that soul, all these things have come about. This world has come. This world has come. Exactly like in the movie, you will cry when you take the movie seriously, isn't it? But when the movie is finished, you don't go there to congratulate the hero or the heroine for the best, because if you touch the screen, you know there is neither hero, there is no heroine there. It was all an illusion that the movie has created in us. Similarly, Atmaiva tadam vishwam. Atma, or the soul, is the background. And if we forget that background, then we have to suffer. That is Krishna's point. Atmaiva tadidam vishwam srijyate srijati prabhu. That Prabhu, Krishna, or the soul, he creates this whole creation, the Vishwam, the external world, and trayade tradi vishwalma. Exactly like the way in the film, he creates it. And he maintains it for some time, and he withdraws the whole thing back again. Trayade tradi vishwalma, hriyade haradishvara. Hriyade haradishvara. So Krishna creates, Krishna maintains, and Krishna destroys. But it is not separate from Krishna. It has come from Krishna. Krishna keeps it in that way for some time, and Krishna pulls it back to him again. And that is what in the Chalishloki also says, isn't it? Aham evasam evagre, mandyandam sadasat param, paschadaham yadedacha, yoga shishyada sosmeham. So, this understanding, Krishna says, a realized soul, how he walks in this world. Edad vidwan madudidam, jnana vityana punam, na nindadi, na jastaudi, loke charadi suryavat. Krishna says to Uddhava, if you have understood this principle, don't look back anymore into this world. Walk through this world. Edad vidwan madudidam, jnana vityana punam. You have the knowledge and you have the realization. And then what will you do? Na nindadi, na jastaudi. You don't have to go praise anyone in this world. You don't have to criticize anyone or condemn anybody in this world. Loge charada suryavat. Just like sun comes in the morning, he spends his time in this world and he goes away. He doesn't think about anything after that. In the same way, Krishna says to Uddhava, Uddhava, that is the way to fix yourself in the spiritual life. So, while talking about this, in this verse also, you can see, Parasabhava karmani, if you lose that identity, asatyam abhiniveshada, you've already fallen. We think that if you break 4 regulative principles, we are fallen, isn't it? This is our understanding, but Krishna's falling is different. Krishna talks about falling. The moment you have fallen into the bodily identity, you are fallen. The real platform is spiritual state, not the bodily state. And to identify in that way is considered to be, Krishna says that is why Krishna says, Mahagrida Kasasiddhanam. That now, the question is coming here, that although this cannot be brought into life straight away, but continuously analyzing this within oneself, some memory of this will come to us for our help sometime. It will help us. I know it is not possible to stay in that state, in our present state of life. It's not possible. Because Krishna is speaking from the very higher platform of self-realization. These words were spoken to Uddhava at the very last minute when Uddhava was going to Badrinath. Uddhava, 125 years of life with Krishna, particularly such a pure personality, and not only that, his service to Krishna was unquestionable. So, no salary, nothing, free service, 24 hours. So, you can see that in Uddhava's case, it's spoken, it is mentioned there in the Bhagavatam. Never once Uddhava asked what salary I am on. He was his prime minister. So that relationship is different. We don't have that relationship with Krishna. When it is like that, it is difficult for us to understand what Krishna is saying. What Krishna is saying is also difficult to understand. Why? Because Krishna, this knowledge from Krishna flows to Uddhava. It flows. It's not spoken, it just flows. Why it's flowing? Because when Krishna's heart is pleased with Uddhava's relationship, that is when that knowledge flows to Uddhava. You can see that in the Bhagavatam, we'll come to that later. That when Krishna says here that this principle of flowing this knowledge, when Krishna spoke these words to Uddhava, how did that impact on Uddhava? This is important to know. Na tadha me priyatama alpayo nirna shankara nada sangarshanam na shri naiva alpa yada bhavan. Very powerful words in the Ekadasha Skandam. Krishna says to Uddhava, Krishna has never spoken like this to anybody throughout Bhagavatam, like this. He says, Na tadha me priyatama alpayo nirna shankara. Brahma, who is my first son, he is not dear to me. And Shiva, who is Shankara, is me, is not different from me. He is there, but he is not even dear to me. Na tadame priyadama alpayo nirna Shankara. Lord Shiva is not dear to me. Shankara is not different from me. Krishna says, he is not different from me, but he is not dear to me. Neither Brahma is dear to me. Nor Brahma, nor Shiva is dear to me. Then what else he says? My own brother, Nada Sangarshana, Balram is not dear to me. Na Shri, Krishna must be careful, not even my wife, he says. Very carefully he puts it. Nada Sangarshanam na Shri, Naivalma Chayata Bhavan. Even me, myself, is not dear to me as much as you are. From that word, you can understand that Krishna is immensely pleased with Uddhava, and that is why Ekadasha Skandam knowledge has simply flown to Uddhava because Krishna was pleased with Uddhava. This is the proof of that. That very statement, if you take in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you can see that when this is the principle of spiritual master-disciple relationship. When the disciple and the spiritual master relationship is that close, there cannot be any secret between the spiritual master and the disciple. When that relationship is so close, with spiritual master and be able to stop it, the relationship simply flows from the spiritual master to the disciple. That is how close that relationship is. That happiness, what the Krishna said this to Arjuna once. Arjuna, after the Mahabharata war, Arjuna once asked Krishna, they were going on a walk on an evening somewhere, and Arjuna suddenly felt like hearing Bhagavad Gita and says to Krishna, can you tell me Bhagavad Gita what you told me in the battlefield? Krishna says to Arjuna, Arjuna, that Krishna who spoke to you Bhagavad Gita is not there now. Nor the Arjuna who heard the Bhagavad Gita at that time. Because at that time the relationship was so close. So close. And it is in that relationship that this transcendental knowledge simply flows to the disciple. That is the secret of spiritual life. That's the secret of spiritual life. That is why when we think in the modern world how spiritual life is polluted in various ways, we think spiritual life is education. Education in the sense, like a course and seminar, we can give spiritual life to others. It is not possible. It's not possible, because when you read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, you can see in what circumstances Arjuna realized the truth. In what circumstances Uddhava realized the truth. It all happens at a particular time in life when that relationship matures in his relationship with the spiritual master. Otherwise all this is meaningless. If it was simply a course of a seminar or a course, any university could have done this. Is it not? So you can see from there, Madhadame Priyadama, Vedavyasa Maharshi puts these verses at the appropriate time to wake us up, to understand that. Nadadame Priyadama, Almayo Nirna Shankara, Naja Sankarshanam Nashri, Naivalma Jayada Bhavan. There is no one who is dear to me like you. Not even myself I love so much as I love you. And to such an extent that the pleasure or that happiness what Krishna was receiving from Uddhava's surrender. Uddhava's surrender, that is the key behind it. Bhakti means surrender, nothing else. There is not much technology in Bhakti. Bhakti is simply surrender. Uddhava's surrender was 100%. And that surrender has pleased Krishna to such level. Krishna has not even said like that to the gopis, like the way he spoke to Uddhava. So he says there that 125 years of association with Krishna, and that service what Uddhava has performed, and Uddhava is not an ordinary person. Yes, you see, Krishninam Praviro Mandri, Krishnasya Deda Sada, Shisho Brihaspade Sakshal. Brihaspadi's disciple he is. And what kind of person? Uddhava Buddhisattama, very intelligent person he was. He was not a normal person, he was a very intelligent person, Uddhava. And that Uddhava, when Uddhava surrenders, after, you can see this in the Bhagavatam, when Krishna was leaving the planet, not many people were interested to ask Krishna about transcendental knowledge, did they? Only Uddhava had the intelligence to go to him and sense that Krishna is departing from this world. And what can I receive? What instruction should I get from Krishna? This mind worked only for Uddhava. This intelligence only developed in Uddhava's heart. Of course, later on Krishna, Maitreya Maharshi and great sages came to him. Of course, they are on a different level. But among the many others, how many Yadavas were present in Dwaraka, so many family members were there, none of them had the thought in that way. Before Krishna's departure, let me understand what the truth is. Only Uddhava had that thought occur to him. Isn't it? That clearly shows how intelligent he is, that he was able to sense that Krishna is departing. He was able to sense that this is the time to ask Krishna for the highest real understanding of life. And knowing very well Krishna's position as the answer to Krishna, Uddhava asked the right questions and he got the firm answer also. And only after that Krishna decided to speak Ekadasha Skandam to him. That you will see in the Bhagavatam. So, coming back to this, we have to finish this verse today. So Krishna says here that the so when it comes to this, Vedas are saying that, as I mentioned, Ishavasam idam sarvam yat kinchi jagatyam jagat tenet tektvene bunjida ma ghrada kasya siddhanam. Now, so the we will from the Vedic philosophical understanding that hearing, that means Shrodavyam, Mandavya, then subjecting that to our analysis inside, within ourselves, and Nididhyasidavyam. And that means with Krishna's help, holding on to that truth, what Krishna has spoken in the Bhagavatam. But in order to make that practical, the knowledge, whatever Krishna has spoken in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, for that to remain, to have its impact on us, the last two lines of that verse is important. That means Magrada Kasya Tena Tektena Bunjida Magrada Kasya. That as soon as you deviate from Dharma is important. You see, through dharmam that chitta shuddhi happens. Dharmam itself is not the goal. But living a dharmic life based on principles is very important, because if there is no pursuing dharmam, if we live in a dharmic way and expect that this knowledge to happen, it will not come. It will not come. It's all subject to various conditions. This knowledge, spiritual knowledge, will manifest in a person subject to various conditions. Subject to various conditions. That's why it says here that if we use spiritual life for the sake of name and fame, for the sake of acquiring wealth, or for any other material motivated purpose, that means dharma has gone there. There is no dharma anymore in that. This is what I'm saying. These two things are linked very closely. Dharma and self-realization. Keeping dharma, without dharma in life, if we simply think that all this knowledge I'll study from the books, the problem is it will not come to your help when you need it. This is the problem. That's why in all this, if you look into earlier in the 10th chapter of the Canto 11, they talked about the qualification of a spiritual master and the qualification of a disciple. It says here, Amani amalsaro daksho nirmamo dridasauhrada asatvaro arthajitnyasu anasoyo amokhavak. 9 qualities for a disciple, it says there. And Krishna is saying there to Uddhava, Amani amalsaro daksho. Amani means one who never thinks himself very high of himself. Always thinking himself to be the lowest in the world. Amalsaro, he's not here to compete with anyone. That I have to be better than you, or my devotional service is higher than your devotional service, or to establish something in this world. That won't help in spiritual life. The Bhagavatam, the beginning itself, Murmalsaranam Sadam. So, Amani Amalsaro Daksho is the expert in these things, Drida Sauhrada. His relationship with the spiritual master has to be Drida Sauhradam. It has to be very firm, and it has to be based on pure attachment, loving relationship between the spiritual master. That spiritual master is there only to take care of my spiritual interest, and mutually that relationship has to work. Otherwise it has no meaning. Amani amalsaro daksho narmamo dada sauhada. Asatvaro. Asatvaro means it's not that something you heard something immediately start jumping up and down saying that I'm going to do something. No. After hearing this, total reflection of what you have heard, and after deeper analysis, you have to get yourself convinced that spiritual master has given me the truth. You have to get convinced yourself. Otherwise it's no meaning. Asatvaro artha jitnyasu, and always looking for the truth, self-realization. Artha jitnyasu. There's only one goal in that relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple. That means the disciple's goal is only to see that, am I getting closer to the truth by my relationship with the spiritual master? This should be in the forefront. Asatvaro artha jitnyasu anasuyo amokhavak. He has, man with has no envy towards anybody else, amokhavak, and is a man of few words. Once he says something, he'll hold his word. Not that he changes his word every minute. So, that in Vyavaharam, so what Ishavasamidam Sarvam, that if only this dharma is there in life, only in such a case, Krishna is saying, Ishavasamidam Sarvam is possible. It may not be possible day one to happen, but this Upanishad statement is such an important statement that one who is progressing on the path of self-realization, so if the dharma is not in his life, Ishavasam is not possible. That is the important statement. So, otherwise what will happen is, suppose I say, Ishavasavidam Sarvam, everything is Krishna's. I go and steal money from the neighbor's pocket and say, Ishavasavidam Sarvam. This will happen. This is what will happen. That's what's happening also in many instances. When we do not understand that dharma has a big impact on these statements, otherwise it has no meaning. Isn't it? Otherwise it's no meaning. Ishavasavidam Sarvam. So, They will, because these kind of statements in the Upanishads, it can create sometimes problems also. One who has no dharmic concept of life. One who has no dharmic concept of life, he will misunderstand. He will think, everything is Krishna, so why shouldn't I have it a little bit of that? Why? It's not his property, it's Krishna's property. Once it so happened that a thief entered into a temple. And in the temple, there was a lot of jewelry for the deity worship. And it was gold jewelry and everything. The thief stole all that. He took everything and he ran away. While he was running away, he was caught. They handed him over to the police. So police says to him, why do you take these things from the temple? He asked this question to the thief. Thief says, Ishavasam idam sarvam. That was his answer. Thief also knew Upanishad. He says, Ishavasam idam sarvam. I'm not taking your property, I'm taking Krishna's. Why are you worried about it? That was his question. This always happens, these things. Because deity don't protest, isn't it? When you steal deity's wealth. Deities don't protest. He'll stand there, he'll watch everything. Even if you remove his gold chain from his neck, he'll still won't say anything. He'll just stand there. So people are thinking that he's not saying anything. After all, it's only a stone. He won't say anything. So then we do what we like, and then that mood and Ishavasam idam sarvam won't go together. This is the principle. Ishavasam idam sarvam will only work if all these basic things are sorted out first inside. Otherwise, it cannot work. That's so. Otherwise, if you simply apply logic into everything, logically is right, isn't it? Ishavasam idam sarvam. So what's wrong? If I take a little bit of that for my living, if I take something from that, what's wrong if you ask? Logically it is correct. But dharmic, from dharma point of view, it's not correct. So that's why I'm saying that Upanishads, when you study, it is expected from us that we maintain a certain standard of dharmic life in our livelihood. Otherwise it has no meaning. It is simply a words only. It will have any makrida kasusiddhanam. Vedas are particular about that. We will say that in physical level, yes, you can say Ishavasam idam sarvam, or you may say Ishavasam is not practical. Physical level, yes, only dharma is practical. That is true. Dharma alone is practical. But inner level, dharma is not practical. Ishavasam alone is practical. This is the most important thing. Two things. Dharma in the world where we live. Ishavasyam inside the knowledge. There, dharma won't help you. That is important thing. Dharma will not take us back home, back to Krishna. It will not take us. Dharma is necessary in the world where we live. Dharma is necessary in the world where we live. But inside, Ishavasyam is necessary. You can't do business with these two. That is what most of us do, isn't it? We bring dharma into life and force it upon the soul. Soul doesn't need your dharma. What soul wants is Ishavasyam. Soul doesn't want the dharma. The world does not want Ishavasyam, world wants dharma. That we have to understand. Otherwise we could be confused. The world demands from us dharma, not Ishavasyam. If you tell people Ishavasyam idam sarvam, people who are not following any dharma, they will misunderstand that. And they will take you in the wrong direction. So that is why these things are spoken in the Shruti, Vedic literature. It specifically mentions that in Vyavaharam you cannot think of Ishavasyam. Ishavasyam is for the inner realization of the soul. So therefore, in the early days in spiritual life, when we are completely absorbed in the Vyavaharam, dharma is important. Dharma is important. And therefore, there is no contradiction there. Whether you are Dvaiti or Advaiti or whatever it is, as much as you are progressing in your spiritual life and your Vyavaharam comes down in this world, you are going up in the path of self-realization, dharma becomes less significant and Ishavasyam takes the priority. In the beginning, dharma takes the priority, Ishavasyam takes the backseat. Ishavasyam takes the backseat because in the world, when we are dealing, when our Vyavaharam, we are active very much in this world, at that point, dharma is a necessity. Dharma is a necessity. We should not mix up these two things together, Vyavaharam and dharma and Ishavasyam. Ishavasya is a realization, state of realization. So, so in our own state where we are today, we have to accept that as it is, and conduct the Vyavaharam or Dharmam in this world in that way. Here Krishna is there, Dharmam is there, everything is there. Here sinful person is there, a pious person is there. But especially if you study the Dvaita tradition, they will mention this. They will separate it out, everything, sinners, sinful people, pious people, and God, and everything is separately spoken. So in a worldly level, if you look at it, it's all perfectly right from the worldly platform. But as much as in that particular place, playing you are correct, we accept that also. But when you are come to the truth, what is discussed in the Upanishads, you can't impose that law, what you have learned in the world as Dharmam on Ishavasya. That you can't do it. You can't mix these two things together. Dharmam is necessary in this world to maintain certain necessity. It is to maintain that Dharmam. Why? Krishna says it is through Dharmam that we will reach that state of, in order that Ishavasyam to manifest inside, Dharmam is necessary in the world outside. This is linked in that way. But Dharmam alone will not take us to the state of self-realization, where Ishavasyam is required. Ishavasyam is required. So therefore, Dharmam, that is why it said that Tena Tetvene Bunjida Ma Grida Kasyasid Dhanam. Why did he say that? Because only if you are in that state, Ishavasya Sarvam is possible. You see, that 4 lines if you take, Ishavasya Sarvam Yat Kinja Jagatyam Jagat, Tena Tetvene Bunjida Ma Grida Kasyasid Dhanam. Tena Tetvene Bunjida Ma Grida Kasyasid Dhanam is refers to Dharma. Ishavasya Sarvam Yat Kinja Jagatyam Jagat is the spiritual side. You see? So, if this is not there, if that's not there, Ishavasya Sarvam Yat Kinja Jagatyam Jagat cannot happen. This is how it is blended together. It is blended together. In so even if you look at great Mahatmas, when they behave in their life in this world, you will see that they maintain the Dharma always, even after self-realization. Why? Because they know very well that if you don't follow the Dharma, that Ishavasyam, what he is seeing is false. Is false. To give an example, one Mahatma in an ashram once, what happened was, in the ashram people were bringing rice to the ashram. And in the olden days, rice was packed in gunny bags, isn't it? Jute bags. They were packed in. Nowadays you find the modern bags which are well sealed and it never leaks out. But in the olden days, say 40-50 years ago, this kind of packaging system didn't exist. So most of the rice was packed in a gunny bags, which was something like 100 kilos or something, and they used to sew it up with the jute. They used to sew it up. And when they transport the rice in the trucks and all that, a lot of rice will fall. Quite a lot will go because the packing wasn't so good. So to this Mahatma's ashram, people were bringing rice. And every day somebody will bring some rice to the ashram for the inmates to have food. So in that process, a lot of rice will fall before it reaches the store. They will go and put the rice in the store and the people will go away. And this Mahatma used to go and pick up every grain from there. And he was a realized soul, and he used to do this. And every grain he used to pick up and bring it back to the store and hand it over to the store people. So somebody asked this person that in your present state, why are you bothered about these few grains of rice? You should see the answer what he gave was, he said, you may be thinking that I am doing such a unimportant job. For every grain of rice if wasted here, I have to give account to Krishna, he says. I have to give an account to Krishna. So conscious he was even on such a small thing. So conscious. When you go through supermarket sometimes, you all must observe this. the way they deal with the food. Sometimes packets are broken with the food one kick. How could anyone with a little understanding of Krishna consciousness will deal like this? Is what I'm saying. Dharma is missing. And such a person may take Ishopanishad and study all the verses. What is the use? What's the use? So what I'm saying is that Ishavasam sarvam yat kinja jagatyam jagat is dependent on Tenatyakena Bunjira Magrada Kasasya Dhanam. If that state of realization is not there, Ishavasam sarvam is difficult to happen to a person. So in order to stress that point, it is spoken that one is responsible, that even in the physical level, if you maintain dharma, in the experience level, Ishavasam will be very easy. It will be easier. Dharma you cannot give up at any stage, even after realization, because they are connected like that. Vyavaharam, dharma must exist. You cannot take it away from the Vyavaharam stage. And that is why often that you see that sometimes people they take to spiritual life and many years they absorb in spiritual activities and suddenly they fall away and go. Why? In their spiritual activity there was no dharma. If you carefully observe, you will see that. And then we start saying, oh, he has done so much service, why did he fall away? And he was such a big man, GBC or Guru or whatever we say. And then he is gone suddenly one day. Why? Because of this. He studied the books, he got all the verses, got understanding also, but there was no dharma inside. If dharma is there, it won't happen. It cannot happen. Because what protects you in all your dealings in this life is that dharma. That is what is our armor, the sheath that protects us. And in that we have to perform our spiritual activity within the framework of that dharma. That's what it says here. So, therefore, when you come to Ishopanishad, you will see an interesting verse there. It says there that those who are completely taking the shelter of the body and engaging in spiritual life, they will go into darkness. In other words, without building this life, building our life in this world based on dharma, and not taking care of the karma, that the body is nothing but a field, isn't it? Why is it a field? Because there is a lot of plants growing inside. What is that plants? The plants means the seeds are there in the form of karmavasana. All that karmavasana start growing inside and in different plants grows inside. And that is why Krishna says, if you look into the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Idam shariram kaundeya kshetrajnam avidhiyade. Kshetram kshetrajnayor jnanam etal jnanam matam mama. This shariram, material body, kshetram itavidhiyade. It's a field. It is in this field that everything is growing. It's compared to a field like outside. In this field, things are growing. What is growing here? Our karma, karmavasana. The seeds are there inside us. In our subtle body, all the seeds are there. Those seeds are sprouting and it starts growing like a plant inside. Idam shariram kaundeya kshetram itavidhiyade. One who has understood this, Krishna is saying there, what is kshetram and the kshetrajnan inside. Kshetrajnan is the soul. Kshetram is the material body and kshetrajnan is the soul, one who lives in this material body, in the field. So, one who knows this difference between the two, he understands, Krishna is saying. So, it's the same thing, Ishavasam idam sarvam. So, one who realized this knowledge of Ishavasam idam sarvam, and keeping that inside, and maintains this body according to the dharma in this world, Krishna says he will become complete. He will reach perfection. He will reach perfection. Because this mantra in the Upanishads is very profound. I keep repeating this. Ishavasam idam sarvam, it is a mantra which requires very, very deep reflection. That is why we took so many weeks to talk about this one particular mantra. Because it is the whole Ishopanishad is centered around this one mantra. Ishavasam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Tena tektvena bunjida magrada kasasya dhanam. All acharyas have commented on this. They have written very exhaustive commentaries. Prabhupada also has commented on this, in order that to understand the depth of thought behind it. That if you understand this verse well, and if you reflect on this verse well, you can see spiritual life you have to maintain within the framework of this. And then the results will come. Otherwise results cannot come. Sometimes what happens, when we forget about the dharma side of it, we think that, oh, it is for Krishna, I can do anything. These all ideas are coming from that, because there is no understanding of the Upanishads understanding. We misunderstand that anything I do is okay because I am doing it for Krishna. Isn't it? Misunderstanding comes like this. It does not work like Krishna doesn't want anything from us, whether we do it or not. Ultimately, for our own benefit, we want to get out of this body. That's why we are engaged in all these things. So from here, you can see that if we do not do that, what is happening, this balancing act, perfectly balanced state. So knowledge inside, spiritual knowledge inside for the soul, and dharma for the physical worldly existence in this world. Worldly plane, whatever you have to maintain it, you have to maintain in that state, and you have to know where to hold it back. And on the other hand, the self-realization we have to acquire from the knowledge of the Upanishads, And doing these two things together, we have to get out of this material world in that way. And if you don't do that, if you don't do it in this way, how Upanishad is talking about, what will happen is, it will bring immense misery to us later. You can see that also. Suppose you have understood Ishopanishad in one way, and you understood the principle Ishavasya Vidam Sarvam. On the other hand, you didn't care for dharma. What will happen is, eventually you will fall in your spiritual life, and you will get completely confused about it. You will start questioning the Shastra, you will start questioning authority of the Acharyas, and you will become an atheist at the end, and life will be miserable after that. This is the reason why I was saying that. You have to be so careful in spiritual life. Like, it is not do as you like, it's not DIY. Spiritual life is not DIY. Spiritual life is based on certain rules and principles behind it, and if we don't follow it, we will be driven into an awkward situation in life. It is better to be a materialist, enjoying senses, rather than falling into that state. Because at least a materialist is ignorant, he doesn't know anything. He is completely absorbed in the body, he enjoys his body and he goes away from this world without caring for anything. But after coming to studying Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Upanishads and everything, and then not following what they say as far as our existence in this world is concerned, what will happen is, eventually it will end up in distress, because Shastram won't protect you. A person who lives that life, Shastram cannot protect him. Krishna says that very openly there. And in that situation, you will lose your faith in the Shastram, you will lose your faith in the Acharyas, and eventually you will lose all interest in this world. And that is when big crisis happens in life. You can look at yourself in many people's case, how this has happened throughout the history. This has happened all the time. That's why it is stressed this point. Knowledge, when it reflects in the upadhi of dharma inside, only then it is not a disturbance. Without disturbance, and you can stay peaceful in this world. If there is dharma inside, and if there is knowledge inside, and that knowledge will reflect into that dharma, and you will be peaceful in your existence in this world. But if there is no dharma, simply acquiring knowledge from everywhere and living your own independent life, free from all kinds of dharma, then it will only end up in a big catastrophe later. It's going to happen in that way. It has happened to many people throughout the history. So, even if that happens, and he will have a lot of internal pulls, conflicts inside. Conflict will develop. I don't know whether you have thought about this. In spiritual life, sometimes the moment our false ego starts getting in and start dictating what we should do and what we should do or shouldn't do, and we start seeing shortcuts to fulfill our desires in this world, and using the position of a particular person in his position, whatever it may be, and use the Shastram to fulfill all those desires, you will see that person
getting into serious problems in spiritual life much later in his life. The crisis will come. It will happen because he has not accepted the fundamentals of spiritual life, which Krishna is saying here. That so sometimes you can see people will understand things. Some intelligent people, they are very good, clever, intelligent people. They listen to Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. They will catch all the ideas what's spoken there. But in personal life, there is no following the principles involved. Following the principles involved. The dharma is one of those things that if you keep on thinking, keep these things in mind, and if you look at many personalities in this world in spiritual life who have followed spiritual path, how they fell from their position because of this lack of dharma in life, you will observe this. That is why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Uddharet Alma Atmanam. Atmanam na avasadayat. Atmanyeva Atmahi Bandhu. Atmaiva Almana. It's a famous verse in the 6th chapter. Probably if you have seen that, you will take notice of it. Uddharet Alman Atmanam. Krishna says, you have to elevate yourself. Krishna is not going to come and take you out from here. After doing all nonsense in the spiritual life, then expects that Krishna will come one day because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so merciful, is going to do it for me. If you still see that, you'll be sitting here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not going to come. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has got better business to do than pulling us out because of our own false understanding and ignorance. Or maybe when Krishna says, Uddharet Alpanam Alpanam na avasadayet, that it is your responsibility, Krishna says, to elevate yourself. Atmevai Alpano Bandhu. For us, we are the friend and we are the enemy as well. Atmeva Ribhur Alpana. From that verse, you can see Ishavasyam will work. If you accept that verse, Ishavasyam will work. Krishna, when he spoke Bhagavad Gita as well as Srimad Bhagavatam, he has put forward the principles of yoga process, isn't it? Bhakti, Jnanam, Karma, various processes Krishna has spoken in the Bhagavad Gita as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And as a sadhana process, Krishna has given us the process of chanting the holy name. As the sadhana process. That is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told us. Chant the holy name, it will purify us. It's the easiest way to purify inside. Purification means that we ourselves understand what is our handicap. What is actually the problem inside us. By chanting the holy name, we will come to know what are the seeds inside, what's causing the problem for us in our spiritual life. And therefore, keeping those principles associated with the holy name while chanting. When Mahaprabhu says that, Na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavidam va jagadesha kamaye mama janmani janmani ishwari bhavdavatri haidutri. Even in that 8 verses, what Mahaprabhu has given, he has spoken there very clearly that these are conditions attached to chanting the holy name. They are not separate from the holy name. They are conditions, restrictions put on the holy name, that under these conditions, if you chant the holy name, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will give shelter. Otherwise not. He is not expected to give a shelter. Isn't it? So there, those things what he has spoken about is all related to dharma it is. The dharma is not taken out. People think that, oh, Mahaprabhu's movement is so nice, it is free flowing, love is completely flowing, the treasure house of love is open and it is all open to everybody. That is fine. But that is also come from the Vaidika Dharma. This Radhanuga Bhakti, what is spoken in the Bhagavatam, is also a part of Vaidika Dharma. And Vaidika Dharma do insist that these dharma must be followed. You can't take that away. It's not a free-for-all feast given freely like that. It is attached with all the restrictions also. That is why if you want to live in spiritual life forever, and if you want to make that progress in the right direction, then dharma is a necessity. So with that, most of the things what we have to say about that, what much we can make it practical, that much we will get the result also from this. That is why I say like that, the mother Veda, Shruti Mata is called mother, Veda mother, Shruti Mata it is called. She, out of her compassion for us, she is telling these things to us. Ishopanishad is like that. Ishopanishad is one of the most prominent Upanishads among the 10 Upanishads, isn't it? So Ishopanishad statement is very precise and it's very much only the essence is spoken. It's not expanded. But you need to expand it and to understand in what background these verses have been spoken. And if you read all the other remaining verses in the Ishopanishad, you will notice that this Ishopanishad is nothing but Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is an expanded version of Ishopanishad. That you will see when you study Srimad Bhagavatam in depth, you will notice that Ishopanishad principle is the same that is spoken in the Bhagavatam. But Ishopanishad is much more in a summarized form. So with this we will finish Ishopanishad now, because this first verse only we thought of discussing first. Because the remaining verses are nothing but an expansion of this verse. If this verse, if you have understood well, and all what we have discussed in the last so many classes, you will get very easy to go through the remaining verses in the Ishopanishad. Remaining mantras are all connected with this one important verse. So what we'll do from next Saturday, we will continue with the back to Narada Bhakti Sutram where we stopped. We stopped that few months ago, isn't it? So we'll go back to Narada Bhakti Sutram and continue that. In addition to that, because now the holidays are coming, the bank holidays coming, next Easter weekend, and also after that we have one more long weekend, 4 days. So we have booked a hall at the Watford Community Centre. That is on the Good Friday and also Easter Monday. Good Friday and Easter Monday. And then next weekend, which is the Royal Wedding Day, I think on the 29th or so, and then the Bank Holiday Monday, those 2 days. So 4 days. Also we have booked that hall at the Center Point. Yeah. And they have given us the time 6 to 9 in the morning. So if you can come at that time, was thinking of discussing this Chatushloki Bhagavatam, the 4 verses. So if we have got 4 days, 3 hours, so 12 hours we'll have, we should be able to discuss that Chatushloki Bhagavatam there on that 4 days. This is the plan. If you can make it, it's good.
Same time
Every day, yeah.
Same time.
6 to 9 in the morning, because most of the people will be taking rest at that time. So it's the best time to discuss Chatushloki Bhagavatam. So those 4 days we have booked there. And then during July, the last 2 weeks, that is from 18th of July to 29th of July, the 2 weeks, we have also booked a hall there for 2 weeks to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto. 10th Canto, not the whole of 10th Canto, a few chapters in the beginning. Reason is that Srimad Bhagavatam, there are many things in the Bhagavatam which normally it is very difficult to discuss it in an ordinary class. Find it difficult mainly because either there is not enough time, or sometimes listeners also have developed some understanding from Bhagavatam. But when it discussed in detail, you can see that Srimad Bhagavatam has some more message to tell us, and that you will only, when you enjoy listening to it, you will understand why it is Bhagavatam is given this high position among the Vedic literature. So those 2 weeks also we have now booked with the hall there. Yeah, and we're hoping that we can start about 8 o'clock in the morning and finish us at about say 12 and have an hour for lunch, and from 1 to say 4 o'clock we'll see. So 2 weeks we'll see as much as we can get through the Bhagavatam. So Easter weekend and then the Royal Wedding weekend and Bank Holiday weekend. So 2 plus 2, 4 days, and then this 2 weeks also we have booked. So we'll see how things go.
The 2 weeks, it's Monday to Friday?
Monday to Friday, yeah. Monday to Friday. Stop there and we'll have a 10 minutes break.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, महाप्रभु की श्रील प्रभुपाद की
I knew what color we should have
somebody's taking the no, there's somebody there.
Is it off now?
It doesn't, that word does not ring a bell.
No, but that's what it means.
Off chicken है. Naveen bhai, turn this off, turn this off. It's not off, you know how to do it. I don't know how to do it, turn off.
I don't know as well, no, I need somebody else to do it.
He's talking, but he's turn it off. Dimitri. Turn this off. बंद करो ये. बंद करो. इधर रिकॉर्ड हो रहा है.